It says we aren't scheduled to start until 12:05, so it will likely take us live. We're live now. Okay. All right. It's like a new sandbar every time I do this, but that's okay. So, hi everybody. Welcome to our session today. I'm super excited to bring these amazing thought leaders forward and have this conversation. As you all know, if any of you have followed me before, technology and I need couples therapy. So I'm doing my best to manage through this. And if you hear rogue noises, strange sounds, we're going to do our best to manage that. We've already had a couple challenges, but we're just going to jump in. So thank you for being here. My name is Barbie Winterbottom. I'm the founder and CEO of the Business of HR. And I coach and consult and do lots of different things in the people space. And I'm super excited to have this conversation today. Joining me is Tracy Spanenberg, the Chief People Officer at the Granite Group. Lisa Sterling, the Chief Administrative Officer at EverCommerce, and Mary Kate Hauk, who is a VP of Talent with the Mosaic Company. So some really, experienced and amazing women who are leading the charge in this space, who have great experience to share with us. So I will allow them to introduce themselves for just a minute and why they're interested in this conversation. Before I do that, I also want to share with everybody who is watching from LinkedIn, the way the live broadcast system works is it will not allow us to respond to comments that you make through the LinkedIn platform. So when we get to comments and questions, I will do my best to answer them. I will log in through my phone and we will try to push the questions forward to the group through the online platform. But just know we're not ignoring any of your comments. The system just will not allow us to comment back. Now, if you are watching through YouTube Live, we will see your comments, and it allows us to respond to those comments in the actual chat, whereas LinkedIn does not. So I just wanted to let you know that, because last time I feel as though people felt ignored, and it's just a system glitch or issue they're working through right now. So I wanted to prep everyone for that as well. All right, so let's kick off with Tracy. Welcome, Tracy. Thank you for being here. My friend who I'm trying to talk into moving to Florida as soon as possible. And
someday
in person, which was amazing.
No, it was so fun. I can't wait to come back.
Yes, I know. We can't wait to have you back.
Great.
So welcome.
Thank you. Make the introvert go first. And so I appreciate that time.
I'm so sorry. Well,
I'm prepping. I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to say? So I'm thrilled to be here. I do anything for you. I'm most excited actually to hear from Mary Kate and Lisa, and certainly share some thoughts, answer some questions, in whatever format we can, and talk about what it's been like for the past year, what the future looks like, what my thoughts, our thoughts are on the future of work and how to approach that. And Barbie, we're very, very aligned, and I think we all are very aligned on what that looks like. And so I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate your tremendous support for what I do and my growing business and all of the clubhouses and comments and all that we share. And it is kind of interesting how aligned we are in our approach to what we do. So thank you for that. All right, Lisa.
I can't wait. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I can't wait for that one thing where we just vehemently disagree. That'll be really interesting.
It will be. I will. Yes. Clash of the Titans. It'll be fun. All right. Lisa, welcome.
Well, good afternoon, or I guess good morning too. Thank you for having me, Barbie. And I have to say, Tracy, it's so, it's so weird to hear you reference yourself as an introvert, because seeing you all over social media and the things that you do on Clubhouse and stuff, I would not for a second have classified you in that category. You do a great job of being an extroverted introvert. So looking forward to hearing more from you today. And like Tracy, listen, so much has happened in the last year, and yet there's so much more opportunity that's coming in front of us in the way that we really rip out and replace the thoughts that we've had in the past about how organizations are designed and how people experiences are created. And I'm excited to learn from the two of you. Mary Kate, I haven't had a chance to talk to you before, so really looking forward to this and hopefully sharing some insight people can take back and leverage in their organizations.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. And I know you get asked so many questions pretty frequently around the changes in how we'll be structuring the HR function and the people team. And I think that'll be really interesting dialogue as well. Tracy and I just had a similar conversation on Clubhouse yesterday. And it's really interesting how we think things will evolve, but a lot of it's still unknown. So it'll be really great to see what does and doesn't come to fruition going forward. All right, Mary Kate, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited to meet both Lisa and Tracy, and since we haven't had a chance to connect, and I think the common theme here for sure is that we're all still learning. Obviously, we know that there's been a ton of change, but as far as what the path forward is going to look like, it's going to contain a lot of more change, as well as being in this mode of learning. So taking time to have these conversations are so important. And so really appreciate you having me today as well, Barbie.
Oh, well, thank you. We are honored to have you here. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. Mosaic keeps you incredibly busy. And your whole team has been going through a lot of change in the past few months. So that'll be an interesting spin and on your take, right? Not only have you been dealing with COVID and everything else, but transforming the infrastructure of how you deliver people support within your organization has completely changed over the past couple of months. So that's really got to be an added layer of complexity that your people are challenged with. So I'll be interested to hear how that's going for you guys. So we have a few questions that I have prepared for the panel. If you are watching through LinkedIn or YouTube Live and you have questions that we don't touch on, please feel free to send them through. And again, while we can't necessarily respond to you in the chat, I can see them and I will bring as many of them forward as possible. So I thank everybody who's watching, and it looks like we already have some comments coming in. So, all right. So what do you guys see? And Tracy, I'm going to start with you just because you're to my right on the screen. So we're going to make it happen. What do you see as the biggest challenge you and your organization is facing as we come out of COVID, right? The world's starting to open up again. And there's a couple of common themes I'm hearing among the organizations I support from a consultative perspective, and then also just my network of folks within the space and in the TA space, is that hiring has gone from, a completely saturated market of unemployed people to a 180 of we can't hire anybody right now. So, the tides have just flipped almost instantaneously in certain pockets, not necessarily universally, but in certain pockets, certain industries, certain perhaps levels of organizations. So what's been the biggest challenge as we're coming out of this for you?
I hate to sound like a cliche, but talent is definitely it. And I'll explain why and what our industry is like. So we sell toilets, and we're a plumbing wholesaler. We sell a lot of different things, but that's the easiest way to describe it. And we have 622 people with 45 or so open positions. So we're in the mid 600s, 50 locations now. And up until 2 weeks ago, all of these locations were doing their own sourcing and selecting. So all of our talent functions sat not with HR or a people team, but with the branch managers. And that's because we grew from a mom and pop shop, a one store location, and grew and grew and grew and grew and just exponentially grew. And so one of our strategies this year was to bring that in-house. And so we just had our first talent acquisition manager start 2 weeks ago, and he's working with somebody from our people team that we moved over to support him and work alongside to bring that recruiting function in-house. And that's important for so many different reasons, but for consistency, for the candidate experience, most importantly for DEI, because we do have, we're 85% male. And we are largely white. And if you are doing your own hiring and you're a white male at one of our locations, chances are, you'll hire someone that looks like you. Not always, but so there were a lot of reasons to do that. So I might not have given that same answer even 6 months ago, But for right now, that's the answer. The difference is I do believe that the talent is out there. I believe that it's being the kind of employer that people want to work for, and then walking the walk once they get in the door and treating them well so that they don't want to leave. And that's where you can attract people all you want. And if they come in and turn over a few months later, what good is that, right?
Right. It just causes more disruption to the organization and puts you further behind and raises your costs and all of that. So it's a really interesting perspective. I think you and Mary Kate may have some common ground there from a workforce composition perspective, and the talent within the org and the talent you're attracting from having, a heavily skewed population of male for sure. And white males based on your industry, right? It's the historical evolution of the industries that we're now seeing starting to change. So with that, I'll switch to you, Mary Kate. We're going to switch up the order since it seems so closely tied to a lot of the conversations you and I have had recently. And so I'd love to hear your perspective.
So I think, obviously, yes, the workforce is very similar. The major difference for us, especially throughout COVID and post, is that the majority of our workforce, not much changed. They were still going to the site. So we're in the mining industry. And so we're at plants and underground and mine sites. And so keeping that perspective that the majority of our workforce continued on, other than maybe having to wear masks and have some additional safety protocol, not a lot changed there. And I think the challenge we're talking through is that exact piece of hiring is going to be different because expectations are different and people's values have changed, or they're still figuring them out. And so how can we think about hiring differently in that maybe you don't need a long-term hire all the time? And how do we meet with the market? I think we've talked about gig economy for a long time, and that doesn't always translate to all positions and make a ton of sense. But how do we think creatively about melding that together so we aren't constantly trying to keep up, and instead being an attractive place for right now or for a period of time that does make sense, where there's value for the individual and value for the organization. Yeah. And then I think the other piece of it is that, a lot of our employees just want answers. A lot of people want to know, and then that translates to candidates wanting to know, what is it going to be like? Am I going to be remote? Am I going to be working in an office? And that uncertainty is the new normal. And so people that have that aptitude or ability to say, okay, this is how it is today, and it could change a month from now, and I'll figure out and learn what that experience is going to be like, is quite different. And that's not the majority as far as the willingness to tolerate that much uncertainty.
Yeah.
We should talk. We have an in-person workforce as well. So we should definitely, we haven't had the opportunity to meet. I've met Lisa, but I'd love to chat offline.
For sure.
There's two things that you brought up, Mary Kate, that I'll touch on before we jump over to Lisa that just kind of stuck out to me, is the gig economy piece, right? As you mentioned, we've been talking about it for a long time, but what is that going to look like going forward as we bring in talent to our organizations? Because it's not just for Uber and Uber Eats and DoorDash anymore, right? It's for so many other areas. And it's really great. I've actually been approached recently by a few potential clients where, they're a company of 20 or maybe 30. So they don't necessarily have the budget for a full, element of C-suite titles, but they know they need people strategy, help, and development so they can scale their organizations and get beyond the 20 employees and get to the 100 and the 500 or what have you. And so I think it's really interesting how we as internal employers are looking at how will we leverage the gig economy. And then, I think we've got some CEOs and COOs who are also in that mindset of how can we bring in fractional talent, even at the executive space, to help us craft our strategies going forward until we are at a critical mass of being able to support having that C-suite on site, or within our org as a W-2. So I think that was really interesting. And the other piece you said, which has gone out of my mind, I will remember later. I cannot remember what it was. I've got too many things going on. This is my ADD kicking in right now, right? I've got squirrel. Here we go.
The beauty of live.
It is, and it is. But I will remember, and I will bring it up, I'm sure. With that, Lisa, let's move to you. What's been the biggest challenge, or how has your org changed coming out of COVID?
Yeah, so we are a little bit different than Tracy and Mary Kate's organizations in that we've doubled in size in the last 3 years, all through acquisitions. We've completed 50 acquisitions in the last 4 years. We grow very much inorganically. And so for us, there's the retention issue, right? Because we are integrating organizations that can be 10 employees to 130 employees almost on a 6-week basis into our organization. And so, as we've been coming through this, bringing people into an organization such as EverCommerce during a pandemic when everybody is remote is far more challenging than bringing them in when they can actually be in the office and our people are on site and those relationships are being built, right? So that's definitely been an issue for us. Now that the workforce is borderless and the talent pool is everything, we, like everybody else, are having the same challenges with recruiting. Our talent acquisition team 18 months ago was one person. We've grown it now to over a dozen in the last 12 months. And we have 160 job recs open across the globe. We're in 5 different geographies. And so, again, I think for us, it's being cognizant of the fact that choice is what people want. People want choice on where they work, when they work, how they work, who they work for. And I'm seeing a lot of people asking far deeper questions about not our culture, but more about what type of infrastructure we provide around support, right? Like, we have to address the fact that people have been traumatized over the last 12 months. People are coming back into the workforce after losing loved ones, after losing jobs. There's this kind of remnants of what's happened over the past 14 months that employers are going to be responsible for creating environments where it's okay to come to work and not be okay, and to have that trauma. And I think candidates, knowing that they can work anywhere because they have choice, they're being far more thoughtful about who they want to work for and who they want to work with. And we're seeing that in our own organization. And so we're being really deliberate about making sure we're creating that opportunity for psychological safety and people to be able to have those conversations about mental well-being and challenges and the trauma that they faced. I think the companies that nail that are going to be the ones that are going to be far better in the success of retaining and acquiring new talent into their organization.
Absolutely. And you reminded me what I was going to say, and it ties in. Yay! Thank you, Lisa. Earlier last year, I had received a study, and within that study, and I had made some videos about it, 70% of employees look to their employer as their source of information about the world. And we think folks are watching the news and they're watching social media, and they are doing that. But as Mary Kate and Lisa said, they're looking at us like, how is it going to be different? What is my life as an employee at XYZ company going to look like? What does that mean for me? And how are you filtering through the noise of everything that's happening with the pandemic and the economy and the housing shortages that we're seeing in certain areas? And how are you then, filtering that down and making sense of it for your employees? And I was really surprised by that study. And I will go back and post the study in the comments after our session today, because I was amazed at the fact that our employees truly look to us to help them make sense of what's going on in the world, right? And the zeitgeist of our society has just gone, from one extreme to the other over the past couple of years, with social issues, the pandemic, we've got political issues. There's just been one thing after another that, I think our folks are just, in so many ways, we're emotionally exhausted. The fatigue is really high. The anxiety levels continue to spike and ebb and flow. And they're looking to all of you as the leaders of their people teams and often the leaders of employee communications to help them make sense of it, even more so than other outlets. And I love hearing how seriously you guys take that responsibility and that you're giving it thought and meaning so that you can support your folks in the best way possible. But I think, as Lisa said, they're looking at it from the very beginning of the candidate process. It's not only once they're an employee, it's from before, when they're even considering you as an employer. What are you sharing with the world? And it makes a big difference. So thank you for that reminder so I could bring it back.
Well, and Barbie, I would just add too, I don't know how Tracy, yours and Mary Kate's organizations are, but there is an expectation. Well, let me step back. So in the last year, like, our work lives and personal lives have collided far greater than we ever expected them to. I used to always talk about the fluidity of work and life, and there are these collision points where the two hit. And last year, that got accelerated in ways that we never ever felt or thought were going to be possible. What I've seen, though, is for a lot of CEOs, the evolution of their thinking around that has stopped at the work part of this. And to your point, if we expect there to be fluidity between our work lives and our home lives, and those collisions and intersections when it comes to work, we absolutely have to change our mindset that is what they expect from us in terms of communication and how we see the world. And I've heard CEOs say, oh, well, we're not going to talk about certain things in the workplace because it has a political innuendo or whatever. No, like, life is life and work is work. And the two have been completely blended in the last year. And I think the organizations who have executive leaders who think that there's going to be some separation between that are going to be the ones that find higher retention issues within their organization, because people don't want to work for organizations where you create that separation in certain areas, but you expect the collision and the fluidity in other areas. You have to have commonality in your strategy and your approach, whether it's leave it all out or bring it all in. And companies are going to have to bring it all in. They're just going to have to be thoughtful about how they message and how they continue the conversation in a way that engages everybody.
And keeps it safe, right? We talked about the emotional intelligence. It's the psychological safety side of that it is okay to bring that, and there won't be the misnomers that came along with it in the past, because we've seen this extreme human element that we didn't necessarily have, and that's a huge advantage. But we have to make it okay. We have to make it safe for people to do that.
And it's a big shift, and it's a permanent shift. I certainly hope that this, we ask people to come to work, or we used to ask people to come to work and leave their personal lives at the door. At least they did when I started my career. We did. And now we can't. I don't use the term work-life balance anymore. There is no balance. It's just life, and work is a part of life. And if we don't embrace the whole person for all the messy complications that they may bring, we're doing a disservice to them and to us and to our companies.
Absolutely. And I would say, as probably about the past 2 to 3 years, I'd left that phrase work-life balance behind and started using work-life integration, because that's really where we were headed anyway. And I think that COVID just fast forwarded that in a way we didn't anticipate. But I think sometimes that's not that COVID was good for anyone, and I don't mean to be insensitive, but in some ways, just ripping off the Band-Aid and doing it is the best way to do it. Making that shift because we had to showed us that we could. And now, to Lisa's point, we can't ask for people to give us flexibility and be all in when it's convenient for us. And then when it's no longer convenient, say, okay, but now you stay in your lane and we're staying in ours. It just doesn't work that way. And I think now that folks know that it can happen and it can be different, they're simply not going to accept it in any other way. And that's what I'm hearing more and more from my client groups and from my network, is that, no, we're not going to do it. The first question I've seen everyone ask when roles are posted is it remote or is it on site? Mm-hmm. And they're not even asking about compensation first anymore. That is the very first question they want to know. And I think that's a big indicator of what we're going to be seeing, going forward. So thank you all for that. We've got some comments I'm trying to see. So there's this feature where the comments can come through. So I'm super excited. I'm going to get my tech certification after this, y'all. So No, nobody wants that. Trust me. All right. So next question. How has this past year changed the focus of your people team? We've kind of talked about just work life in general, but specifically what changes have you seen or have you initiated or supported or had to do within your teams to support your organizations in through COVID and coming out of COVID? Lisa, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so we've gone through a pretty significant actual restructuring of our organization. Similarly to what Tracy mentioned earlier, our talent acquisition efforts used to live within our solutions organizations. And as you can appreciate, when you grow from one organization to a combination of 50 now, that is not scalable, and it is not an effective way to manage. So beyond just the talent acquisition team, we've really restructured our organization to be focused on the core pillars of what people expect from a people team, right? There's the operational element of it, and then there's truly that talent organization where the more of the vulnerability of the people, the leadership, the programs, et cetera, really come into play. And so we've revamped our entire organization. We've created different kind of work streams for people, and we've changed what I would consider the profile of the people that we are selecting for in our organization, both on the people organization, but also more broadly. We've stopped working so much on creating jobs and going out and finding the right type of talent and building roles around them. That's been a pretty significant shift for our own team. As we had people interviewing for pretty significant roles, I got feedback like, whoa, wait, hold on. That person doesn't have X number of years of experience. And my question is, what the hell does X number of years of experience actually do to prove that they can create value for the company and for the business? How does that define if they're going to be successful? And so a lot of our strategies around how we're thinking about assessing a person's capability to be successful and to drive value creation for the org have grossly changed in the last 12 months. And it's been challenging, but it's also been incredibly rewarding to see people come in who wouldn't fit the typical job description, and they are having the utmost success because they had the learning, potential. They had the learning agility. They had the chops to get in there and be thoughtful and ask the right questions and get close to where the action was happening to learn and then go do what they needed to do. And again, I don't think there's any years of experience or specific things you can put on a resume that replace those types of things when you're hiring people into your organization.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a big shift, right? And I know myself, the words have come out of my mouth in the past is we have to look at the work and then the people. And if you don't have the right people, you need to get rid of what you don't have and bring in what you need. That was the mentality we had, right? Oh, it's always define the work first, which I still believe we have to define the work we need first. But I also now think there's an additional element to that to say, let's define the work we need, look at the talent we have, and who do we have that could fill that? Or is it several people who have skill sets that can come together and support that versus doing away with X, Y, and Z person and hiring new talent, right? How do we morph into this to support the work we need to do with the talent we have, or go out and find people who can do that and other things that may not traditionally look the same as it did before? And I think that's a hard thing to wrap our heads around when you come at it from years of, nope, it's black and white. You need this, you need this, you need this. And if you don't have them, find them, right? So it's a big, big change. So I think that's a really great insight. Mary Kate, did you have something you wanted to add to that? I saw your head.
Yeah, no, my head could bob off. I was nodding so much, and definitely want to talk more about that offline with you, Lisa, because I think there's so much of an opportunity too to shift to this value delivery, and the shift that we've made in HR, among other things that have happened structurally, is getting to a more agile delivery, meaning that we actually understand what our customers want, and we're not just designing solutions that work for us. We're making sure we understand who it's actually for. What are we actually creating for them that either is going to make their jobs easier, that we're going to be able to continuously improve, or that we're going to reduce cost in one way or another. And getting iterative, doing one thing and getting feedback, and then being able to continue to improve along the way. And so instilling this view from the employee experience or from the customer experience instead of from the HR process or from the talent processes, and then more iterations to deliver value more often, is also an approach that we started to see shift, because being virtual and getting people to come together to do normal long-term project execution is just not realistic. And this helped us get people really focused, get wins more often, celebrate more often, and learn faster in our iterations and our delivery back out to the organization.
Absolutely. And I think it lends to, the whole agility and the agile mentality and bringing that into the people space, right? And I spend a lot of time with folks in coaching sessions or consulting about how we do that, because perfection doesn't exist. And I think in the HR space, because of the work we do from a pay perspective and benefits perspective, when we make mistakes, it can impact people's lives. And if we make a mistake in sales or marketing, it can have an impact on the business, which is important. But if we make a mistake within the people team, it has a direct impact on those we see every day, we work with, we care about. Are they going to pay their mortgage? If we get payroll wrong, right? Somebody can't pay their bills. That's a big deal. The stakes are intense, and they're higher in some ways than in other areas of the business. So we've had very low tolerance for iteration in the past. It better be perfect before you roll out that new tech, that new process, that new program. And we're realizing that we don't have to be that. And perfection is elusive. It's not real. So to adapt that agile mentality within the people space, I think is going to take us light years forward in a much faster way than in the past, as long as we can get our own people to be okay with it and to let go of that need for perfection. And I think that's a challenge that we deal with, at least with the folks I'm coaching right now. And in the past 6 months, that is one of the number one things we talk about, is letting go of that fear of the need to be perfect, and having confidence that you are a strong player. You wouldn't make these recommendations if you didn't know what your org needed. And so I love that you're doing that. And I know you have a tremendous background in agile and in transformation, Mary Kate. So your people are in great hands, and I look forward to learning more from you in that space for sure. All right, we got lots of great comments coming in.
And I want to jump into, while you're looking at the comments, Barbie, just because we have revamped our team in the past year. And in an interesting way, we're a very traditional company. When I started 5 years ago, I had one person. She had been there for 30 years. Her father had started the company we acquired, had been in every job in the company just about. And then another person who had been there about 5 years in accounting, and we had her part-time. And they served very tactical roles because that was what the organization needed at that point. We didn't have an ATS. We had some basic HR technology. So we fixed a lot of things first. And then over the past year, we've gone from trying to transform into a people team from an HR team. And what we did, and something I'm super passionate about, and Lisa touched on this, is passionate about designing jobs for people. I want my whole team. They have unique skills. They are all wonderful in their own special ways, but they may not have been doing the kind of job that, first of all, they were passionate about, and second of all, where their talents lied. So I took them all out to lunch separately, basically asked them to lay out an ideal job and what they would be good at. And I had a sense that this would happen. And it sort of aligned where we could take each person and have them have aspects of their job that they weren't crazy about, but design a job for them within the people team where they could be very successful and very happy. So we have a very analytical person serving a people analytics role. We have a person whose favorite thing to do to talk about is talk about benefits with new people. serving as our benefits manager. We have a people experience manager who's designing that entire process. And we moved one of our people over to the talent team. So I think that's a very small scale, but my hope is that we can do that on a larger scale. We have real critical work that is very hands-on work that has to be done. And that's going to be very much, here's the description, can you do it? But for a lot of our other roles, this is a wonderful person. This is a talented person. Let's make sure we find where they fit. So my hope is that we can kind of cascade that throughout the organization.
I think the next level up from that is that we need more people like the three of you who are leading the people function to be able to look across your teams and be okay with having a role that perhaps wasn't clearly defined before, and being able to identify the talent that person has and let them lean in and live fully into their strengths. I think the other mentality we've had in HR for so long is that your strengths are great, but let's just focus on building up your weaknesses, right? Let's focus on, you need to be able to be all things to all people. And so that's great that you're a strong communicator and you love benefits, but I really need you to learn TA. I really need you to learn this. I really need you to learn that. And our people have constantly felt inadequate and beat up. And like, am I ever going to be able to celebrate what I do well and enjoy that and live into that? And I think that's where we're going. But I believe wholeheartedly it takes leaders like you to have comfort that it's not going to look the same as it did before. And that's okay. We're creating something new, and that's how we evolve. And you've all heard me say this before, right? What happens if we don't evolve? Failure to adapt causes extinction. And it's something that is absolutely true in business and in the world of HR and people. If we don't adopt or adapt to what's happening, we will lose our input and we will lose our invitation to be leaders within our organizations, because we have got to continue that adaptation and evolution as we go. And I think we're seeing some big changes happening there already. So great insight, Tracy. Thank you. All right. Anybody else have anything on that particular area? Because I think it leads us really well into the next question I'm so excited to ask all of you. When we think about the talent that you have today and the talent you need, if you have open roles on your team or you're thinking about what your team's going to need in the future, what are the critical skills, habits, competencies you're looking for in HR talent? If you were, maybe you don't have an open role, but if you were going to add a role to your team, what are some of the core things you're looking for that might be different than you looked for in the past? Because we have a lot of folks watching today who are really interested in maybe getting to that executive level within the people space or leveling up their game. And a lot of folks are kind of lost, right? They see this evolution happening. They see that the world of work is changing, but they're not necessarily sure where to focus. Do they need a certification? Do they need this? Do they need that? So I'd love to hear from each of you. What do you look for in talent when you're bringing folks into the people team? And Mary, go for it, Lisa. Sure.
I'll jump in. So I don't, people on this call may not know my background, but so I've not grown up in HR. I grew up in product sales and operations and had my first stint in HR at Ceridian as their chief people and culture officer. And I will tell you, I think the things that our CEO at the time, David Ossip, was looking for in me are a lot of things that I look for in the people. And I actually do have open roles right now on my team that I'm looking for. But it's learning agility, it's compassion, it's empathy, it's vulnerability. It's somebody who's got that level of emotional intelligence that can understand what their strengths are and what their non-strengths are and be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Like those are the things I look for. I will say, no offense to the people on the call that have grown up in HR, I'm not looking for lifers in my organization. I want people that know how my business makes money. I want people to know what our go-to-market strategy is. I want people to understand the challenges of our customers. And then that all in turn helps them understand how to build the right programs, the right systems, implement the right technology, do all of that from a people perspective. And I think it means changing everything that you think about in the people team too. Like, we've evolved all of our analytics on the people team to push aside things that are about effectiveness and kind of the operational things. And we've gone to looking at things that actually tie to the business. We look at revenue per employee. We look at lost opportunity cost. We look at the cost of people salaries versus the rest of the organization. Like, we don't measure time to fill, because quite frankly, if my team says to me, we took our time to fill from 50 days to 45 days, I'm still going to be freaking pissed that it takes 45 days to bring a person into our organization. So it's looking for somebody who has a business mindset too. I don't want you to come to me just knowing all of the policies, procedures, compliance, things like that. I need you to know how our business runs, or how a business runs, in order to operate effectively. And if you don't, I'm sorry, I'm going to pass on you.
I swear I did not pay her to say that.
Really? Because we talk about this all the time. We talk about this all the time, Lisa.
When I talk in my sleep, this is what comes out of my mouth. But
Yeah.
it's why I named my company The Business of HR, because we need business leaders who work in the people space. And Tracy gets credit for coining that term. But it is absolutely the cornerstone of everything I do. Helping our HR folks understand that we've got to stop being the HR people, the HR police, and be business leaders working in the people space. And I love that you have that background. And I can say wholeheartedly, one of the best hires I've ever had on my team never worked in HR. And I hired her in the director of talent acquisition, and she blew the doors off of it. And she's now an SVP of TA for, a global company, because she understood how to run TA like a business, and not like, oh, we're going to, put the help wanted sign out today and see who comes in. So love everything you said, Lisa.
I love that.
Thank you.
I wrote a post about, you don't have to be in HR to work in HR, to lead HR basically, and thinking about people like you, and also I was thinking of it as a call to arms for those of us. I am a lifer, and there are jobs that if I were to go to, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't get, because they'd be looking for someone like you, justifiably. So we need to, as people leaders, those of us who've been in the field for decades, need to really step up our game. And I agree with you in hiring, all of that. And I'm going to add, as I'm looking, I look for the ability to build relationships, and build relationships quickly. I look for the ability to influence, all of those things, plus that. And something that I feel was definitely missing in me, and that I see missing in a lot of my peers, the ability to be really bold and courageous, and push things forward, and stand up firmly to the executive team, to the CEO, and advocate. Advocate for social justice issues, advocate for your people, advocate for talking about mental health. That is super critical. So those are some of the things that I look for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with a lot of those. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Tracy, I would saying being bold and confident and things like that are so incredibly important, because let's be honest, the majority of people, and I'm just generalizing here, but the majority of people in CHRO roles are women. The majority of people in CEO roles are men. And so to your point, if you have a person who doesn't have confidence, who isn't bold, who isn't willing to stand up and fight for those things, equality, injustice, all those things, you're never going to move the business forward. And a lot of times the women sitting in our chairs don't have that level of confidence, or fear starts to seep in and doesn't allow them to express their full thoughts and their full desires. And then it just continuously kind of pulls back the progress that's being made. So I think your comment about bold is so on point.
And a pragmatic way to do that, if we're talking about, back to Barbie's point about, there's people on this call about how do you move up and how do you progress? I took a turn. So I did start in the talent space, and then I had an opportunity to lead digital transformation. I had absolutely no business doing that whatsoever. Every day was clueless, and would walk in and have to figure out, okay, what do I accomplish today? I learned so much, and I approach my role completely differently now because I did that. And I also did a role in customer experience. And so saying yes to opportunities in the moment that may not make sense, or even take you off a path that you think you should be on, will only broaden your perspective And then back to your point about being confident and bold, it only helps you because you've seen other parts of the business, you've seen different ways of thought, and you're not in that traditional HR silo for your entire career. It's only going to help. So people that are willing to take that risk and step outside of their comfort zone and try something different and fail. I mean, I did not do that great. I learned a lot about what to do wrong and how to inform doing that better in the future. But it totally helped my foundation and how I lead today and how I approach talent in an organization.
Say yes and figure it out. You just say yes and go.
Well,
that changed my life a few years ago.
And don't you find that creating a safe space for your team to say you're going to fail at some point, right? It's going to happen. I'm not here encouraging you to fail. You know, I don't necessarily subscribe to that whole Silicon Valley thing where, you know, fail fast and fail often. I don't know about that, but create a safe space for your people and let them know that it will happen. It's happened to me. Here's how I handled it. It'll happen to you. And that's okay. As long as we learn from it and we don't repeat the same mistakes over and over again. I think that's the differentiator, right? Is that when you do fail, when you do make a mistake, learn, dissect it. What could I have done differently? Pick it up and keep going, right? And it's not the end of the world, right? We're not doing heart surgery right now. People are not going to die on our table. So let's just do the best we can and keep learning. Because I said this to one of my coaches the other day, just because you have those initials of SPHR behind your name or whatever certifications you have, doesn't mean you are unfailable, right? We all are. It's just reality. So give yourself some grace, allow yourself some space to try something new and be okay if you didn't get it, 100% right away. And I think that's a big change in the people space, is to be okay with that.
Yeah, a quote I have on my computer right now, just as a reminder that I share with a lot of people on my team. It's a Maya Angelou quote, which I know we all love, right? They're timeless. But do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. It's that simple. Yep.
That's a perfect. I'm going to put that on my computer too. I love it. All right. So next question. Do any of you have anything else you wanted to add into that particular thing? Thank you. So insightful. And what I love is that there's so much alignment, right? And I'm not surprised that Tracy and I are aligned because we talk all the time, or that Lisa and I are aligned, or that Mary Kate and I are aligned because I have relationships with all three of you. But to hear the three of you who don't necessarily know each other have the same perspective and forward thinking or forward view and lens is really great to me. And I'm sure to everyone listening that, okay, this is the reality of where progressive leaders are going to take their teams. And if that's the kind of team you want to be on, these are the people to listen to. These are the people to follow, whether it's social media or if you write or you have blogs or whatever it is, right? Pay attention, because it's not just a coincidence that the three of you are saying so similar, are saying very similar things. It's because you're like-minded in your approach and you're strategic in the way you're approaching the work you do. And I think the people in this space need to pick up on that and carry it forward as well. So I love that.
And I wanted to add just and network with other people. So I don't know Mary Kate, but I'm so excited that we got a chance to meet. Lisa and I know each other, though I don't think we've ever spoken. But I feel like I know you, and you keep hiring my friends.
You're sending great talent, so thank you.
I'm so excited for you. But if you don't know how, you'll align with people if you don't get out there and have these connections. And I look at this as I look at this as more of a learning experience for me than a sharing experience. So every time you have a conversation with someone, it's an opportunity to learn something that could help change you or change your company or change your people's lives for the better. So every time I get on camera, I try to talk about that. Get out there and talk with somebody.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's okay to not have all the answers. Mm-hmm. I think that those of us who have been kind of lifetime HR people like Tracy and myself, when we are in a meeting, for whatever reason, when there's a question and it turns to the HR person, There's an expectation that we know everything and we have the answers to everything. And I want everybody out there to hear it's okay to say, I don't know. Give me some time and I'll circle back and I'll give you something to think about, or I'll find an answer to that. Or, that's new. We haven't faced that before. Before I answer, I'd like to do some more research, so that you're not just jumping in with whatever you might think is the right thing, because superficially it may look like that, but we need to go deeper. So it's okay to say, I don't know, and then come back to it with your recommendations or with data or with whatever it is the question was. I see this happening often, where there's just this insecurity and this need to have an answer instantaneously, and that's not reality. I've paid attention, right? And I'm sure you all have as well, at your levels and sitting around the executive table. Does anybody have an issue when somebody from sales or marketing or finance says, I don't know, I need to look at some data before I respond? Nobody thinks twice about that as an answer from anyone. But when they come to the HR space, there's an expectation that we just know it immediately. And I think that has got to change as well. So really great insight there. All right, guys, I want to be cognizant of our time. We've got about 8 minutes before 1. So another question we have is, have any of you ever had a coach? And if you did, how did it benefit you and why did you have a coach?
I still have one today. For me, I'm a big believer that if I don't invest in my own personal growth, there's no way I can be held accountable to successfully investing in other people's growth. And so I have an executive coach that I meet with actually on a weekly basis. And, I leverage him when I have my 911 calls, right? Where I leverage him, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. I just need somebody to put me back on the track and not let me derail the whole train. But other times when I want to have a thoughtful conversation about, like, help me understand my own areas where I need growth, right? And I don't have a really good saying like Mary Kate does, but I have a sticky note on my desk or on my laptop that I have that says, pause, always start with why. Because for me, I'm the type of person who, if you can't notice this in this call, I'm high energy. I go, if I've got an idea, I am running out of the gates. I've already made it around the track and finished the race while people are still getting set up. I got to stop doing that because people don't run at the same pace as me. And my coach has been so incredibly thoughtful about saying, Lisa, this is a wonderful, wonderful trait, but you got to understand how you run past and over other people. And so it's helping me identify my own non-strengths and my own areas of opportunity, and how to kind of pivot my own behavior around other people to make them equally as successful. So I think it's the best thing you can invest in. And if your company doesn't do it, I would highly, highly encourage you to try to get it for yourself. It's been life-changing for me.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that HR folks have traditionally done the annual conference and that's it. Right. And we haven't nurtured ourselves. We haven't continued to water the plants of our own garden, so to speak. And I think we're seeing that changing. And I think it's so helpful for folks like you, Lisa, at the executive level, like Mary Kate and like Tracy, to say, yeah, I have a coach. Like, we don't know. I have a coach. I coach other people and I have a coach. Because you can't, I don't know if Mary Kate, this might have been something you said to me, but you can't read the label when you're inside the jar. It's just not possible, right? It's so simple, but it's just so powerful. When you're in the middle of yourself, you can't see where you're screwing up or what you're missing or your blind spots. So it's just so helpful. I think you said that. Somebody said that.
I wish I could claim that one. That's good, but I don't think No, but it's true. And I think you also need to have different coaches at different times, depending on where you're at and what you need. And so, I have my 911 ones that I can call when it's a specific situation. I have kind of the regular cadence, which is more of that longer term, thoughtful, helping with perception. And then I had a dedicated one when I was leading digital transformation, because that was a risk for the organization to put me in that role. And so they invested in dedicating an executive coach. And so it was really preparing me for that next level without a specific path in mind. And so with every kind of milestone or achievement, there was a really clear development tie to it as well, which was a huge advantage in going through that experience. But I agree with all the comments here that, we all need it, and we all need to invest in it as well as not just be advising and providing it for the organization.
Mm-hmm. I think Mary Kate brought up a really good point about knowing what you need in the moment. So I've had various things at various times. I've had peer coaches, I've had friends who are coaches, I've had this, I've had that. I've tried a little bit of everything. Earlier this year, I was approached for an executive women's network for C-suite executives. And what I realized was I worked really hard on myself as an HR professional. I worked really hard at that. I got all kinds of coaching. I got all kinds of support. And I felt like I was doing a better job showing up as an HR professional. But I felt like I needed a lot of help to show up as an executive, particularly as a woman executive in a male-dominated industry. And so I approached my CEO, and I was actually a little nervous because it's very expensive. It is not cheap to invest in yourself. It's very well worth it. So I sent him an email and I said, I really want to do this. Like, not 30 seconds later, congratulations, I'm proud of you. That's awesome. Go right ahead. And, in hindsight, should I have just done it? Maybe, but that's part of that thing in the back of my head still that I'm trying to work on. So I have a peer coaching network, and my next evolution beyond that will probably be an individual executive coach, which I haven't done. But I think it's important to know what you need in that moment, and important to know that changes over time, or may change over time for you.
Mm-hmm. And what serves you today may not serve you tomorrow, and that's
right.
Okay. It's just, I've said this to a couple of folks who I've coached, and I've said, I think you're ready for someone else. Like, we've gone through this, and I want you to meet with somebody else and see their perspective, because no one person knows everything, right? And I said, it's just like hairdressers, right? A lot of people go to the same hair person for a while, and then they decide they want to switch it up because someone else has expertise in a different thing, right? They cut differently, they color differently, right? So we change things in our lives all the time. Why wouldn't we change that too? And it not even only on a formalized level, but in an informalized level, right? Go to your internal network of people you work with in your organization. It's okay to do that too when you have those trusted relationships. It doesn't always have to be a paid coaching relationship. It can be, I'm going to go to the COO or somebody in operations to learn how they're applying agile methodology, and maybe I can take some of that and figure out how to apply it within the HR space, right? So there's so many different ways you can receive coaching that doesn't have to be what you traditionally thought about as coaching. Although, I'm a huge advocate for that for obvious reasons, but it doesn't always have to look like that, for sure. All right, so being mindful of time, we can go a little bit over, but I respect everyone's time. I do just have one quick question, maybe if we could do it as a lightning round. What is the best advice you would pass on to the next generation of HR leaders? Tracy, we'll start with you because you're to my right.
Yep, and I've got to bounce right at one, but
okay.
Take risks. That's something that was really hard for me. Take risks. Try not to be afraid of that.
Love that. Lisa?
I, first of all, so agree with you. Become comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, I tell my team that all the time. I have a slide about it. Flex those muscles, and they're going to burn at times. But when you flex them and they burn, you become stronger, leaner, and faster. So get to that point where you can really be uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Love that. Mary Kate?
I'm going to steal what Lisa said earlier. Be bold. It's okay to be bold in HR.
It is. It absolutely is. I want to thank you guys. We could probably talk for hours, and maybe we'll get together and do this again. But I want to thank everyone who joined us. Tracy, if you've got to go, I certainly honor your time. Thank you. Lisa, thank you. Mary Kate, thank you. Everybody who's watching, thank you. I am so excited for this series. I will be doing this weekly for as long as I can get people who want to talk to me. So I'd love your suggestions for topics. And I am on LinkedIn. I am, again, the CEO and founder of the Business of HR. I do coach HR professionals and leaders. I do consulting work. So if any of you are looking for support like that, I would love to chat with you. You can find me on LinkedIn or on my website. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon, a wonderful week, and love you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.